The year is 789 AD, and across the rugged fjords of Scandinavia, a storm is brewing, not of wind or rain, but of ambition, courage, and steel. From humble villages nestled between mountains and sea, a people are rising. They are the Vikings, farmers, traders, and warriors whose name will soon echo across continents. For over 3 centuries, they will carve their mark on history, building a civilization that blends ferocity with ingenuity, chaos with order. This is the entire history of Viking civilization, their rise, their reign, and the legacy they left behind. Let's begin where it all started, Scandinavia, a land of harsh winters and unyielding terrain. By the late 8th century, this region, modern-day Norway, Sweden, and Denmark, was home to scattered tribes united by a shared Norse culture. They worshipped gods like Odin, the all-father of wisdom and war, and Thor, the thunder-wielding protector. Their lives revolved around farming, fishing, and crafting, but population pressures and scarce arable land pushed them to look beyond their shores. The Vikings didn't emerge from nowhere. They were shaped by necessity. Their longships, sleek, shallow-drafted vessels, were their key to the world. Built from oak and pine, these ships could navigate rivers, cross oceans, and beach on any shore. With clinker-built hulls and a single square sail, they were marvels of design, capable of carrying warriors, goods, or families to new horizons. And so the Viking Age began, not with a grand declaration, but with a single shocking act. On June 8, 793, a fleet of longships descended on the monastery of Lindisfarne, off England's northeast coast. Monks fled in terror as these Northmen looted gold, silver, and sacred relics, slaughtering those who resisted. The Anglo-Saxon Chronicle called it a day of divine wrath, but for the Vikings, it was a triumph. Word of this raid spread, and soon, Viking crews launched assaults across the British Isles and Francia. These weren't random acts of violence. They were calculated strikes by men who knew the value of wealth and the power of fear. Raiding became a rite of passage, a way to gain riches and reputation. Chiefs, called jarls, led these expeditions, promising their warriors glory in this life and a place in Valhalla if they fell. But the Vikings were more than raiders. They were traders, too. By the 9th century, their ships carried furs, amber, and walrus ivory to markets in the Baltic, Byzantium, and even the Islamic Caliphate. In return, they brought back silver coins, silk, and spices. Towns like Birka in Sweden and Hedeby in Denmark grew into bustling trade hubs, their wooden streets alive with merchants and craftsmen. The Vikings' reach stretched east along Russia's rivers, where they founded the Kievan Rus, a state that would shape Eastern Europe. They called themselves the Rus, possibly from a Norse word for rowers, and their influence lingered long after their ships departed. Yet it was exploration that truly defined the Viking spirit. Around 860, a man named Nadid stumbled upon Iceland, a volcanic island of ice and fire. Word spread, and soon, Norse settlers arrived, fleeing overbearing kings or seeking free land. By 930, Iceland had a thriving Norse community, complete with a unique assembly called the Althing, one of the world's oldest parliaments. From Iceland, the Vikings pushed further. In 982, Eric the Red, exiled for manslaughter, sailed west and found Greenland. His son, Leif Erikson, went even farther, reaching North America around the year 1000. At L'Anse aux Meadows in Newfoundland, archaeologists have uncovered a Viking settlement, proof that these Norsemen touched the New World 5 centuries before Columbus. They called it Vinland, a land of wild grapes and promise, though they didn't stay long. Back in Europe, the Vikings weren't just exploring, they were conquering. In 865, the great Heathen army, led by the sons of Ragnar Lothbrok, perhaps a real figure, perhaps a legend, invaded England. They captured York, turning it into Jorvik, a Viking stronghold. Across the Channel, they besieged Paris in 845 and again in 885, forcing Frankish kings to pay tribute in silver. But the ultimate prize came in 911, when the Viking leader Rollo secured Normandy from the French king. His descendants, the Normans, would later conquer England in 1066, tying Viking blood to one of history's most famous battles. At their peak, the Vikings reigned over vast domains. In the North Atlantic, they ruled Iceland, Greenland, and the Faroe Islands. In the British Isles, they held the Danelaw, a swath of eastern England governed by Norse law. Their ships patrolled rivers from Ireland to Russia, and their runestones, carved memorials, dotted the landscape, telling tales of valor and loss. Viking society was complex, too. Women held more rights than in many contemporary cultures. able to own property and initiate divorce. Freemen farmed and fought, while thralls, slaves captured in raids, worked the land. Runes, their angular alphabet, preserved poetry and history, like the Eddas, which recount tales of gods and heroes. Yet every reign must end. By the late 10th century, cracks appeared. Christianity, once resisted, began to spread. In 1000, Iceland adopted it under pressure from Norway's king, Olaf Tryggvason. Denmark's Harald Bluetooth had already converted, raising a massive runestone to boast of making the Danes Christian. Norway followed under Olaf too, and Sweden lagged but eventually joined. The old gods faded, and with them, the Viking way of life. Centralized kingdoms rose, replacing the loose alliances of jarls. In 1066, Harald Hardrada's failed invasion of England marked a symbolic end. His death at Stamford Bridge closed the Viking Age as Norman and Christian powers took hold. What did the Vikings leave behind? Their legacy is everywhere. English words like knife, sky, and window come from Old Norse. Their shipbuilding techniques influenced medieval navies. Their myths inspire books, films, and games. And their spirit, bold, restless, unafraid, lives in the human drive to explore and endure. From the icy shores of Scandinavia to the edge of the New World, the Vikings built a civilization that burned bright and faded fast, but never truly vanished. This is their story, a saga of rise, reign, and an eternal echo in time.